Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks of plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing today, Earthlings? Hopefully you're doing lovely. If you're not, maybe today you'll be a little kitten crazy and happy. We are talking Lego Masters Season 4 here in the United States. Episode number 2, and we definitely need to talk about this one. Things are slowly starting to get spicy. What I mean by that is we're now 2 episodes in, about to be 3, and we're starting to see, where some strengths and weaknesses are. As I told you on the last episode, we are going to find out as time goes on who's for real and who's just a pretender. So this week they had to build essentially a cat house for these little kittens and stuff, and the judges stressed safety and size. They wanted people to go big. So let's kick it off with Sam and Nina. They won last time, and I told you about the golden brick. I was wrong. I was wrong. It was not last week on that first episode. I totally goofed. Anyway, so they built Kitty Pants a laser tag. This thing had lighting everywhere, light bricks and just lighting that was all over the place and different colored lighting. And it was flashing at different opportunities, different times, different intervals, very much so like an arcade feel. Yes, laser tag, but like an arcade feel, like that not overwhelming in a bad way, but that kind of overwhelming stimulation of like all these lights and sounds. I definitely could feel that coming through. So they had that on the lower floor. Then there was a staircase that went to the upper floor. The only thing that I was kind of, maybe not concerned is the right word, just bothered by a little bit. The opening to go from that first floor and the stairs to the upper floor, you saw the cat kind of have to contort a little bit to get up there. Cats are nimble and everything like that. And just, it didn't feel 100% right. But overall, the judges absolutely loved the build. I thought the build was really great. It was just, me being an animal person, I'm like, come on now. Not anything to end the world. So Poppy and Ben, they built Tiger's Studio. This is set to be on the inside of a paint can. And, just the feel of a paint can. And then on the inside, they had all of this art kind of stuff that was going on. They had a dance floor. They had an art studio for the kitten to paint. One of the things that I liked the most was they had this kitten. They had this little brick-built mouse that was on a motor and was just going back and forth, just rotating back and forth. I thought that was kind of neat. Not a whole lot else there. It was a nice build. I wouldn't say it was exquisite. It was pretty neat, though. Allison and Melanie, they did Coco's Cookie Shop. Allison started playing the ukulele to start, and they sang a little song, whatever, very Kumbaya-esque. Anyway, it was a neat idea. They had a bunch of different little cookie builds all over the place. The color palette in this thing was incredible. They had so many different colors and in so many different contrasts, from a darker color to this pop of color over here. So much that was going on. Now, the build was very small in comparison to the rest of them. And that is something that Amy had mentioned, we wanted you to go bigger. They definitely didn't. Don't think it's so much of a hindrance. It's just something, again, moving forward, are they going to be able to live up to that challenge if they have to go bigger? So Aubrey and Ryan, they did Dame Whisker's catwalk. I loved the catwalk on this. This is meant to be like a catwalk, like a fashion idea and stuff like that. Lots of color, lots of things going on. This thing was large. It was full of details for the cat to mess around with, all these little intricacies and stuff like that. The movement in it was phenomenal. Just an all around a really, really good build. It was solid. It was what was needed. And yeah, I'm a fan of the way it turned out. Tim and Tim were up next. The Texas Tims, Tim Squared, whatever you want to call them. They did Iggy's Treehouse. It was a unique little tree / stump build that had an opening for the kitten, really kind of somewhat arched. So it felt more, royal, more specific than just having this like hole cut out, raggedy hole cut out like you would see in most logs and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of nice. They had nice little decorations all over the place throughout their build. They had a motorized mouse build that was in the center in that cavity where the cat could go in, just the mouse coming in and out on the back side of it. I thought that was neat. And they had a bunch of other animal builds. They had an owl, they had squirrels, they had all these little ground dwelling animals, smaller versions and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of cool. It gave this weird kind of, yes, tree foresty feel to it. It was just different. And they used so many different colors for their builds for their animals. Not like I think their owl was like a pinkish color and a purple is like a coral that was thrown in there. Just a lot of color to be thrown in there. Karen and Amy. So Karen and Amy did Felix's Fort. They had two separate builds. One of them was a hollow upright log. Wasn't the biggest log, left to be desired, a lot to be desired, but it was a really cool pass through for the kitten to go through. I thought that was really nice. It had a very much so a forestry feel. Now, one of the things that they built, they had this other secondary build. It almost looked like a toadstool kind of mushroom. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it wasn't anything that the cat could interact with. It didn't connect to the other build. It was just off on the side. It just kind of looked weird. And I was hoping at some point they would say, oh, and this is whatever it may be. Like I was expecting some kind of motorized function of like a mouse to pop out or something else to pop out, that the cat might paw at or something. And it never was the case. Amy had mentioned that the build is just a bit too small and needs more color. I would agree. It needed more color. I don't know specifically what kind of color she was looking for, like color style, but it definitely needed something. So Jordan and Chris were up next. They did Princess Penelope's Perfect, like purr, like a kitten, cat, whatever, palace. It had a walk-through aquarium with this, with the different fish, like brick-built fish and then like sharks and stuff like that built into the walls like you would see in an aquarium. I thought that was really neat. But it seemed to be kind of lit pretty well. Like, I don't recall them putting any kind of lighting in it, but just the studio lighting, it kind of made it feel like if you've ever been to an aquarium and some of them have the walk through. I know in Baltimore Aquarium, they have it. And like, it's this rounded dome to a certain degree. And you walk through it, this tunnel, and you got sharks swimming over the top of you. That's kind of what the feel was out of that. But there were a bunch of different modules that were put together. They had, everything was like, this was a module, this was a module, this was a module, this was a module. And then they were all going to be connected. But here's the thing. Nothing was connected like you would think of a normal connection with a large build that has different modules and such. They kind of forgot about it. Like it wasn't part of their plan. Like they were so focused on building these modules and kitten can do this and go from here to here. And the modules look great, but they forgot about connecting them, which, that's kind of a big deal, especially in the beginning when Jamie and Amy had mentioned, security, safety of the cat, the kitten. You don't want anything to hurt it. So I do get that. And lastly, he did say, hey, when they were talking about this, he did not like the lack of safety for it. He was specific, explicit about that. And they would only let the kitten walk into the aquarium and come back. They would not let them take the bridge from the other section just above that to the other side to the right because of safety. The cross bridge was not connected. It was just kind of, sitting there in between the modules. And I don't blame him. You don't want to have animals hurt on national television. That would be bad news. So Lewis and Alex. Last week, I think I called him Luis. Based on the spelling, I've always called it Luis. Anyway, so Lewis and Alex, I didn't mean anything by it, Lewis. I promise. They did Sid's Shed. this thing was incredible in the way that it was done. The exterior part of the build, the construction, the actual structure of it felt so solid. You know, I felt like it was a shed that you would see built by a professional to put in your backyard. Like it just had that solid feel to it. And I loved that idea, but the coloring was okay. It reminds me of like walking into an older style tool shop or something like that, like a mom and pop style kind of shop, like a standalone shop, nothing in like a strip mall. It just had that feel about it, like an older hardware store. So that was kind of neat to be able to see. But on the inside, they just made it so cozy. Like I wanted to go in there and curl up and hang out. Like that's what I wanted to do. They had flying fish swing around overhead, which is neat because the kitten was like, hey, I'm kind of digging this. And then they had this essentially what turns out to be like a whack-a-mole game. Like if you ever played whack-a-mole like at a carnival or a fair or wherever, arcade, they had that as well. I thought that was kind of neat as well. I thought that was kind of really well done. Then we move on to Christopher and Robert. They had Sir Fluffington's Abode of Fire and Ice. Christopher is a big fan of Ninjago. And as soon as I saw this build and I heard the name of it, I was like, I see where we went here. If you're a Ninjago fan, you already know. You understand this. So they had this table. If you think of more like the like places where they have fish markets and stuff like that, or even a cartoon style with fish where, you know, fish come out and they're flopping on the ground or whatnot, you know, in a very cartoonish way. They had this table and they had a bunch of little fish that were on there and they were up and down, up and down. It looked like they were flopping on the table. I was enamored by that. I really thought it was a great idea to capture that because again, sometimes it's just about those little minute details. And you may not think, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. It's capturing that. I felt that. Like I felt that in the build. Others may not, but I felt that. And I was like, okay, like if I'm a judge, that's changing how I'm voting, right? It's that attention to detail. So they had these other little light ice builds, not light ice builds. They had these little ice builds and stuff like that with some kind of height to them. And then they had this big kind of brick built fireplace idea with this fire. It wasn't so much like a fireplace. It was almost like going into a train tunnel with a giant thing of fire, you know, staring at you in the face. Anyway, it was a pretty cool build. So Paul and Neolita, they built Stella's fire engine. First thing that you notice, absolutely, it is 100% recognizable. Yes, you know it is a fire engine. You can tell immediately. They've got a little brick-built ladder. Well, all of it's brick-built, duh. But they had this little white ladder that was built up and, you know, the cat could actually walk up it and kind of sit there, stand there, whatever. It felt like a big, like if you've ever taken a cardboard box and let's just say you cut off the flaps on top and the flaps on the bottom, you have this box. That's what it felt like. It was just a boxy build. Yes, it's recognizable 100%. I did not like the build at all. I thought there were so many other things that you could attach in there. Just little details, right? Just anything, just a little bit extra. It looks, and I don't remember what the time limit for this was, but it looks like something if you had a bunch of red and a bunch of white that you could throw together in, I don't know, you know, an hour. It did not feel like it had a lot of depth to it. And it was unfortunate, you know. I mean, the judges seemed to really like it. Different strokes for different folks. I thought it could have been better. Then we move on to Emily and Kelly. They did Sherlock's Home in Mystery Woods. It was this kind of idea, like there's a little library that's in there. Again, kind of this tree stump idea. There's a bridge. I really like their bridge, the way the cat walks across their bridge. That was really well done for the kitten to walk across, I guess you could say. But there were a lot of tiny little builds, a lot of color that was in here. These tiny little bird builds I thought was really cool, really interesting in comparison. Considering where they were last week, I think this was a much better build. And again, this comes into, okay, it's better. How much better is it? where do we go from here? So I don't know. I guess we'll soon find out, right? So we've got to move on and decide. Well, we don't have to decide the top 2 and the bottom 2. Who's going to be in the basement this week? So the top 2, we had Lewis and Alex. I told you that build was remarkable. I loved it so much. And then we had Sam and Nina again in there 2 weeks in a row, just popping up there in the top 2 saying, hey, we're here to stay. And the winner, I get it. I can see why, but I think it could have gone either way. It was Sam and Nina. They win. They got the golden brick. It was this week. I lied to you. I didn't lie to you on purpose. I totally could not remember whether or not they got the golden brick last week or not. But they have the golden brick now moving forward, so that's a positive. Now let's talk about the bottom 2. This wasn't a shock. I would say this was not a shock at all. You had Jordan and Chris, the big thing right there. Safety, security of the animal. Jamie harped on it. It seemed like a very long tongue lashing for reality TV. Like that was pretty intense. Like that's like a Gordon Ramsay type thing, but in a more of a, I work for a toy company, this isn't going to poison somebody idea. It was harsh. And then the other one that you had in there was Karen and Amy. They are the grandmas. They did some really cool stuff last week. I was a big fan of that build. This build, again, too small, missing some things. Wasn't bad. Just wasn't really worth, moving up any further. So unfortunately, one of them had to go home. Karen and Amy are out of here. We are now down to 10 teams. So now let's go ahead and talk about where things are at. So I told you last episode we were going to talk about the basement dwellers. Who's hanging out in the basement? How many times are they going to be there throughout the season? And so we have 2 newcomers this week, or I shouldn't say this week. If they are somebody that has just left the show, like Karen and Amy, I'm not going to put them in there. They've been in there once. It's not really worth anything. So the basement dwellers that we have right now are Emily and Kelly from last week, and now Jordan and Chris. So the reason I do this, and we'll talk about the power rankings in a minute, but the reason I like doing this is it gives you an idea of like, ooh, they've been down there like 3 times. Oh, dude, that's not good. You just never know. So those are the 2 that are in the basement right now. Let's talk about power rankings. We've got 10 teams left. We'll start at number 10. Jordan and Chris, you're in the bottom 2 this week. That's a problem. It is definitely a problem. It's going to have to improve on the next episode, or else, and this was just the design was there. It was just the safety security of the animal. And like I said, Jamie made it explicitly clear, and it was just a thing. It was just something they forgot. At number 9, I'm probably going to catch some crap for this, but I have Paul and Neelita as number 9. But Matt, you said that the judges love their build. How could you put them at number 9? I told you, I thought their build was too simplistic. It was too boxy. I think moving forward, that is going to be of some concern. I'm going from what I'm seeing, and it's just one person's opinion, but I'm leaving them at 9. I think we're going to start seeing some problems here. I'm not prognosticating anything so much as I'm just not a big fan of where they're at. So at number 8, I have Emily and Kelly, being in the basement last week. And then, while their build was good, I still don't know yet. I don't think they've done enough, especially because they were in the basement last week, to really elevate above any other groups other than Paul and Neelita, just because of the reasons I told you. So then we move on to Tim and Tim at number 7. Still not blown away by them. I did like their build this episode. Nothing that really raises them above much else at this point. Maybe soon, but we'll wait and see what happens. Then we move on to Poppy and Ben. Poppy and Ben's build was neat. I thought it was okay. It definitely wasn't better than the ones above them, in my opinion. It felt a little bland in comparison. It wasn't bad, but there were definitely better builds. Then at number 5, I know this is going to shock you. I have Christopher and Robert. Wait, what? You were such a big fan of their build. I thought their build was really nice. in comparison to some of the others, the top 4 here, it was missing something compared to them. And when I say that, it's not like there was some glaring hole. It just felt like there was something intermediate there that they could have done different to elevate it even more. Moving on to Allison and Melanie at number 4. Killed it again this week. I thought they did a really good job. Yes, they got scolded for their size a little bit, but after last week, I don't really see them, moving too far down in the power rankings, at least not yet. So technically, I guess you could say it's almost like a tie for 4th place with them and Christopher and Robert, but we're not going to do ties. Aubrey and Ryan, I thought their build was really nice. I'm putting them at number 3. Lewis and Alex, like I said, this could have gone either way for me. You got to go with Sam and Nina at number 1 because they won the challenge last week. They won the challenge this week. If you're winning back-to-back challenges and we're at the beginning of the season, yes, you deserve to be in power ranking first place, in that first position, leading everybody out. Lewis and Alex, last week, like their build was not bad last week, but if it could have elevated even a little bit more, I could make the argument for them to be number 1. So this is like number 1A and 1B. Like they are too close together. If this was some kind of poll, we're looking at 99.9 and 99.89999 repeating. It's really, really close. So I'll be curious to see moving forward how that looks. So those are the power rankings. We talked about the basement dwellers, talked about all the other stuff. The season is shaping up to be kind of, I don't want to say unique because they all kind of fall into the same thing after a while. This similar build we've seen in season 1 or season 2 or last year. It's just tweaked a little bit. But next week they're doing the volcano build. There's going to be, I'm assuming what it looked like there were 2 little canisters, little black tubes that were in there. And I'm assuming they may be pyrotechnics or something. I don't know if they're going to spill out some kind of liquid or gel or some kind of goo that looks like lava or whatever. Maybe we'll wait and see, but they're building essentially a volcano around it. Now, there's obviously got to be some kind of story element that goes on. Are they going to tell a story? Is it got to have some kind of functionality? I'll be curious to see what that looks like next week. So that's going to wrap up episode number 2 for season number 4. I'm enjoying chatting about it. The show, I'll be honest, for an hour of television, it's most reality shows you can click through and watch the last, 10 minutes. Like this, you can watch the last 10 minutes. You can watch the introduction of what they're going to build, but you've got 5 minutes of Will, coming on and doing his little shtick. And then throughout you have, him walking around talking, the judges talking to them, but you don't really see any substance. And usually what happens is if somebody is struggling, they are focusing on them. Well, you can go and fast forward to the end and watch it backwards and get an idea of like, oh, that's why, versus watching the entire thing. But that's my opinion. And I'm a fast watcher with a lot of things, especially stuff like this. And my wife does the same thing depending what it is. She's like, oh, I don't need to hear all this garbage. Let's go until it gets serious. So anyway, that'll wrap it up. Until we meet again, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.